But Pete, we got to talk about this settlement. It gets handed into the judge on Friday.
Yeah.
Claudia Wilkin, this is the judge who's handled all of these NCAA cases over the years, going back to O'Bannon versus the NCAA. What does she have to do now? Like, what's her next steps with this thing?
Yeah, so this is a months-long process now. She'll review it. She needs to certify it or deny it. She's also going to be put in charge of hearing out if there's claimants, right? If there's people who want to opt out of the back damages class, and then also if there's any more appeals. We've already had the Houston Christian one. So this is the start of another long process. Expect revenue sharing and these roster caps that we're about to talk about to really start to go into effect next summer. I think we'll have a really good inkling by January if she's going to certify this or not.
So it's interesting because there's a couple parts of it. I didn't even mention the major part of it for guys who aren't playing anymore. So if you played from 2016 to now,
yeah,
you're due for back damages. And I heard I was listening to some folks at Big Ten Media, and there was a former football player who I guess his career ended like in 16 or 17, and he was saying, "Hey, I'm going to get some money from this thing." It's an average of $135,000 for a power conference football player. If they basically, it depends on how much did you play, where did you play, and so there is some serious money in this for the folks who already played.
So I give the example of someone like Joe Burrow, right? Like he fit perfectly in this time frame. He's going to make good money off the broadcast NIL. He's going to get the max payout for video games. He's going to get the max payout for lost opportunities probably. And then there's this pay for play category, which is really the money that collectives have dispersed right now. They're trying to make sure that former athletes, I mean, someone like him could arguably make up to $1 million if you like max out all four of those categories. So it's going to be a really good payday for a lot of people. As I joked with someone, some NFL stars will probably be able to buy a new vacation house off the sale.
Yeah, I was going to say Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson probably.
Yeah,
because Lamar won the Heisman in 2016. So yeah, this is going to be a very interesting time for and then those former players who didn't end up in the NFL. There is some cash to be made out of this, but I know what everybody wants to know about is what does this mean going forward? Explain I guess let's start with what's on paper. Explain what they would like to do in terms of NIL deals. Because remember, everybody can pay up to 22% of the average power conference school's athletic revenue, which we think will be around $22 million.
And that's going to go up every year. It's going to jump to $20 million in year 2 and keep going.
Yeah, they think it's going to be like $33 million by the end of this 10-year settlement. Yeah. So everybody can pay that. So there will be players drawing from that. Schools don't yet know or haven't yet said exactly how much of this is going to go to football, but we've been told between 11 million and 15 million is what we should expect.
Yep. Even maybe 17 million, just depending on what school and how it all works out.
Right, because football makes all the money.
Yeah.
And then what happens with collectives, with what we've come to know as NIL these last 3 years?
Yeah, so the settlement had a few, you'd say, like chunks of text that just were not anticipated. And are they shocking? No, but they definitely changed some things, I think, moving forward. One, there's this big long graph about boosters, and it talks about how boosters have to be paying for like goods and services, and it's going to make it very clear that these athletes can't just enter into a pay for play situation. And it's also going to make clear that collectives and these boosters cannot operate on a nonprofit structure, something the IRS has already come against. Now, I don't know about jaw dropping, but the really striking thing that has come out of this is there's going to be a new structure sort of for NIL deals. If a deal's over $600, it needs to be submitted to this new NIL clearinghouse that is yet to really be established. And from there, this arbiter of sorts will have the opportunity to look at a contract, look at the details of agreement. However, the athlete does send it in, and then they'll approve it or terminate it. Now, this is something that's never happened in the last 3 years of NIL. And even more than that, Andy, I know some agents joked around on Friday night, oh, we'll do a bunch of $5.99 deals. No, any any if an athlete signs like with a collective, for example, and like they do multiple $400 deals that put it over that $600 threshold, contracts would still need to be sent for opportunities.
The times. Cynic in me, Pete, when I saw the $600 number was, so $600 is, I believe, the limit where if it's over 600, you have to send a 1099 to the IRS.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, are they trying to make it where these guys don't have to send 1099s in? But no, that's not what's going on here, as you explained. Now, that's the part that we think may get challenged here. And what's interesting, so explain how this works, because it feels a little like their way of getting around collective bargaining, because you can say that these athletes, by taking the revenue share money, opted into this. They chose this.
So I talked to there's an agent, Brian Davis, on the West Coast, runs the Forward Council firm and also reps a ton of athletes. And he's already told me that him and some attorneys are already exploring ways to file a suit over this kind of practice, and whether it be on antitrust laws or just denying like free trade rights. We'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, this is just something that we've never really seen before. And you know, the other thing too, Andy, that was pointed out to me over the weekend was, not only does this impact those like third-party collective deals, this also means like if an Amazon wants to like pay like a top star, like Emeka Ibuka already has a deal with Amazon, like that's probably going to make that partnership a little bit more complicated, because now they need to have their contract read by this third party. And then you truly start to think about, okay, like how many brands are going to want to jump through all these hoops, and then have the situation where their deal is terminated before, if they've already spent good cash on a photo shoot or something like that.
Well, and this feels like the conferences and the NCAA and the schools trying to give the NCAA some level of control back. But the thing is, like, okay, you and I have talked to, coaches, athletic directors. You've talked to people at collectives. No athletic director I've talked to has said this is how it will actually work. No. Every single one I've talked to says it's going to be the $22 million figure will be the floor.
Yep.
And then collectives will kick in additional money. And they're just, it feels like they are planning to operate as if there's no difference.
And that's how they want to operate, Andy. I mean, they understand the importance and significance that these collectives provide. And you said it earlier, but until we get collective bargaining or maybe even employment, they're still gonna be around. So I see this kind of like $600 system being significantly challenged in the courts. And that's just one lawsuit. There's gonna be so many lawsuits that come out of this settlement.
Could Wilkin just say, not this part, not this part? Is that pot, or does she go back to the plaintiff's attorneys and say, here's what I like and here's what I don't like?
She can say that. It's going to be a little bit more complicated, I think, than just like a crossing that out and crossing that out. But yeah, I think she will have the opportunity to really bring up some questions about language and practices she isn't supportive of.
That it's going to be so interesting. But there's another piece of it, and that's the roster caps in different sports. So we've talked about it as, and I've talked about it a lot because of, how I feel about the walk-on situation. Yeah. But the roster cap in football is now 105. So you can't have more than 105 players, but you could have 105 players on full scholarship,
right?
Which is 20 more than you had before. But how is that going to actually work? Let's say, because I imagine it's different for Alabama than that's going to work for, say, Boston College or Wake Forest.
Yeah. So you don't have to max the 105 from what I've learned, right? So you can have 95 instead of 85 or something like that. You can also give partial scholarships, right? So maybe you go all in on 95 and then also have 10 guys that maybe you want to treat as walk-ons that you get partial scholarships to.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to see how it develops. The other thing too, Andy, that I don't think it's ever going to truly replicate the walk-on status that we love, but like a Matt Rule, for example, is going to be able to have 140 guys in camp and then bring it down to 105. things like that. So that can happen. But I do understand it's not the walk-on system that college football loves.
Well, we're going to be hearing Troy Dannon, the Nebraska athletic director, later in the show, and he in our talk mentions the phrase taxi squad, which is a practice squad, and it is what that is in the NFL parlance.
Yeah,
I do think there's room for that. I think there's a way to do that, and then you have your human tackling dummies like me, and it allows a place for that. But this is interesting because this is going to affect recruiting in a lot of interesting ways, because now I would assume, like in the Big Ten and the SEC, they're fully funding those 105 scholarships. And so they can take more players now.
And you know, there's always that saying, like, is it a real scholarship or like a fake scholarship, right? Like, can the 4-star quarterback accept the Ohio State scholarship, for example, or something like that? Now I think there will be more opportunities where they can. And it's going to give the top schools in the country more opportunity to stack talent.
Yeah, I think, but here's the thing, and this is the part everybody's like, oh, they're just gonna stockpile. The 22 spots on the field are what regulates that. So you're going to be so freaking busy with the transfer portal.
Yeah,
we're going to see a lot of movement.
Yep,
a lot of movement.
And that also comes with that new ruling how there's like free transfers, right? Multi-time transfers can move around as much as they want, things like that. So the transfer portal is not going to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah, and now there's other sports involved in this too, and so especially I want to talk about baseball in particular. And I know we got a lot of folks in the chat, big SEC school fans, big college baseball fans, like. Going from 11.7 scholarships to 34 potential scholarships. Now, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
But holy crap, that changes some stuff in that sport.
You know, having some conversations with some administrators, it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these other conferences approach it, right? Like, you think every SEC school is going to max that 34, but then it brings up the conversation of like, okay, like how many what's the talent pool going to look like for some of these like lower conferences, right? So do they not go all in on baseball like the SEC is definitely going to? And maybe do they make, I don't know, softball their thing, like, or do they go all in on women's volleyball, like things like that? That's going to be some big decisions and some projections I think we'll see in the future.
So, yeah, I think this is going to be really, like, the math changes so much, and it's another situation where we can't really predict how this is actually going to work,
right?
With with the recruiting, with the how they're going to fund the scholarships, and we've done this the last few years, like where we thought NIL might look a certain way, it evolved into this. This will evolve into something else. I did have a text from somebody pushing back on one of your statements, Pete, and I think it's fair. So this person said, you said you think most ADs want to operate in the way where the collectives are gonna kick it. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. I think they're resigned to it.
Yeah,
most of them. I don't know how many of them want it, but I just don't think there's any other. Like, I think there's still quite a few true believers who want the NCAA to have some level of control. I just don't think, unless you have collective bargaining, you can have these rules.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a question I asked a lot of coaches last week at Big Ten Media Days, and a lot of them thought collectives were going to be around. I don't know if the excitement level was necessarily at like 105 when they said that.
Yeah, no. And they're not excited about the 105. I don't think they're excited about having to manage that. I do wonder, like, how many football coaches are now calling their baseball coach at their school to say, how did you manage these, partial scholarships? And, how do you handle that politically with the roster?
Yeah, 100%. There's some really other like huge jumps too. Like men's track went from 12.6 scholarships to 34, like things like that. Like, So all of a sudden, there's going to be a lot new room for growth and a ton of other like Olympic sports. So what schools decide to fund that and who do not will be, I don't know, just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, this is going to be fascinating. The other thing, and I talked to Jed Fish about this last week, and I want to get your take on this. With the revenue sharing, there's schools that are going to have a lot more NIL. I don't even know who call it NIL money at this point, but they're going to have a lot more money to pay players, basically, than they've had before in the collective era where they've had to, ask donors to give more. Now they're going to have, so like Jed Fish at Washington is probably a good example of this relative to some of these other Big Ten schools. I always think like Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, who is a great evaluator and a great developer, but they, the way they're structured, it's a small school. They're not going to have the kind of collective dollars that some of these other schools are. But if you put them, kind of in the neighborhood money wise with all these other schools, I feel like the guys who can evaluate really are going to have an advantage in that environment.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, right? Even if you take collectives out of it, if you can scout really well, then you're still going to have dollars to spend on your roster. So it's a really good mix, and I'm not quite sure if it's really going to make it a really even and equal playing field, but I think that given these new resources, it really can make an impact.
Yeah, this is going to be a wild new world here these next few, and we're already seeing it, Pete. You and I have talked about this too. So the class of 2025 is in the midst of being put together at all these schools, and you see these commitments. Remember, everybody can make NIL deal or agree to NIL deals. They can't start paying on them until the guys get to campus.
Right.
But we're seeing, or at least hearing anecdotally about, basically they're backloading these things to August of next year when they believe these payments are going to start.
Yeah. And there's some programs I've been told too, right? Ones who maybe don't have the deepest like NIL collective bank accounts, but have also now started to like talk about revenue sharing numbers and making their NIL pitch, because that can make them more competitive in some recruitments. And a lot of these deals too, I'm hearing are multi-year deals, right? Trying to factor in like what a collective can do. And then beyond that, when revenue sharing does kick in.
Yeah, this is going to be quite a time in college sports. Now we have another season to go before all of this happens, but behind the scenes, this is all happening. So now everybody knows what's going on. We've been educated.
Yep.
Thank you, Pete Nakos, and good luck with the move.
Thanks. I'll be around.
Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.